What would you do if you couldn't fail? This is a great question to ask yourself to get your mind dreaming and reaching for your highest potential self. Reaching for the version of you who's living the most robust life will lead you to experiencing more and feeling more, which is one of the main reasons you want to set goals for yourself. You may think that reaching your goal will bring you happiness, but what's really going to make you happy is the journey and overcoming obstacles that you once thought were impossible. Taking those kinds of actions and having those outcomes will generate the thoughts that make you feel amazing. When you reach a big goal, one that you thought was impossible, you will teach yourself that really anything is possible. And once you know that you can accomplish anything, well, the sky is the limit. Your brain will create the most incredible things, and all you have to do is decide ahead of time what it is you want, and then keep the promises that you make to yourself. And when you do that enough in the right direction, you will achieve practically anything that you set out to achieve. Hi, I'm Tammy. The purpose of the Tammy North Show is to give high achievers actionable content to propel themselves to senior leadership while living a balanced life. Women leading in corporations and large organizations who want to lead with authenticity at the senior executive level have found their community. When you're bold enough to set a big goal, one that seems out of reach, it's possible that you're going to find yourself swirling with indecision and overwhelm. And I'm guessing that this is one of the main reasons that if you aren't seriously pursuing some of your dreams, especially your very biggest dreams, that it's this overwhelm that's probably getting in your way. Yeah, I know you truly do want to reach that goal, but if you don't manage your mind, it will be very challenging to get traction, and very often you're going to become stuck in place. So there's two things I'm going to talk to you about in this episode that will supercharge your path to your goals, and that is 1, the power of constraint, and 2, the power of actually making a decision. So let's discuss the concept of constraint. Constraint is a limitation or a restriction that you put on yourself that simplifies your life. That's it. It's essentially a hard and fast rule for how you're going to live. And you can apply this to your career by deciding that maybe you're only going to work on one thing at a time. For instance, if you're working toward a really huge goal at work, like delivering a big project to corporate leadership or maybe to a major customer, then an example of constraint would be defining exactly what your budget is, exactly what the schedule is for when you have to deliver, and are there any milestones in there you need to meet, and then defining the scope of the project. And just by doing those 3 things right there, that will bring constraint. You'll know there's certain tasks or requirements you don't have to work on. Perhaps there's 10 total requirements you could work on, but given the budget and the schedule, that there are only 7 of the requirements you can actually deliver now. And then perhaps you can work with the customer or leadership or whomever to deliver the other 3 requirements at a different date. So it clarifies what you will work on, and it clarifies what you will no longer focus on. So it simplifies the work. With the concept of constraint in place, you only focus on that one thing until you're done, and then you can move on to the next thing. And with the example of the project that we were just discussing, this provides clarity to you and to your team, and you can move a lot of potential tasks off your plate. You can apply this type of constraint to your personal life as well. You can clarify that each child you have will only do 1 sport per season. I know some children who do 2 sports every season, and their parents are running them around between games, between practices, and they're always on the run. And maybe that is what is important to them, so that's what they've decided to do. But an example would be you can decide next year we're only doing 1 sport per child per season, and then that would simplify. You can decide that your preferred diet includes a portion of your day where you'll be intermittent fasting, and then that means you no longer have to eat breakfast. When you no longer eat breakfast, then you no longer need to shop for some amount of food, and you don't even have to walk down the breakfast aisle anymore. Simplifies your life. You can decide that you are no longer going to mow the lawn, and you can hire a lawn service. Maybe you pay them via Venmo. So that takes 1 minute of your time to send a Venmo payment over to your lawn service, as compared to probably 2 or 3 hours on a weekend taking care of your lawn. You can decide that you no longer watch TV on weeknights, and now you have a lot more time free ready to work on that college degree you've been wanting to complete or start in the business that you've been wanting to get off the ground. And the second major boost to achieving your goals is the power of making decisions. Making a decision is something that will move you forward in life. As soon as you make a decision, that decision alone will bring you some amount of constraint. If I make a decision, as I said, I'm no longer eating breakfast. I intermittent fast until noon or 1 p.m. Then I no longer have to decide where I'm going to eat first thing in the morning. I don't walk in the breakfast aisle. I don't have to decide if I'm eating breakfast before or after I work out. I don't have to think to myself, what do I need to pack to take to work for my 9 o'clock snack? All of that's much easier. All I need to do is take a cup of coffee and then I go to lunch sometime during the day. Very simple. The decision to intermittent fast will make it clear that I'm going to stop doing some things in the course of my day and start doing other things instead. And then likewise, if you think of a food plan, like maybe you're a vegetarian or maybe you're living a keto lifestyle, then this tells you very specific things that you will do and very specific things that you no longer do. If you decide that you're going to stick to a very specific morning routine, one that sets you up for success, then this is an example of something where you decide what you will do every single morning and what you will not do. And all of these things help you say no to other things that don't serve you. There is great power in the decision to do something ahead of time. And then when you honor the promise that you make to yourself and you keep that commitment, it's one of the most beautifully human things you can do. And it will absolutely lead you to living your best potential life. Okay, so I want you to think about a goal, something you would like to achieve, let's say in the next 6 months, and think of one decision about that you haven't made yet. This could be something like trying to lose weight, starting to work out, getting a new job, getting a promotion within the company you're in, completing a big project that's been stuck at work. Maybe you want to leave a relationship, sell a house, move to a new location, start a new job, maybe start working on a master's or a PhD. Maybe you have an idea for a book that you haven't written that you want to write. Think about some of these types of things. Which one of these or something else like this would you like to achieve in the next 6 months? Now, there's something you know you need to decide. Maybe the simple decision is what you want to do in the next 6 months. But if you know, then now what is the next step? Let's say you want to sell a house. Then do you have a realtor? Maybe you need to decide to get a realtor. Maybe there's a couple projects that you want to do before you put the house on the market. So decide when you're going to do the projects and then exactly who is going to do the work. Those are some examples. Any amount of time that you allow yourself to remain in indecision is an indulgence. And much like overwhelm, it will not serve you. Not making a decision is a decision, even if it's unconscious. For example, many people stay in a marriage that is weighing them down and bringing them misery. Many people stay in a job that they absolutely dread every single day. Many people decide to remain at the exact weight they are, even though they always tell everybody they're on a diet or they're going to lose 20 pounds. Many people decide to sit at their computer at work and check email for 8 hours straight. Many people decide to spend 8 hours a day scrolling on social media, etc. You get the point. There is decisions that you make, and even if it's unconscious, even if all you're doing is kind of vegging, chilling, not really taking any action, scrolling, letting the next Netflix episode start, whatever, that is a decision. When you actually decide what it is you want and you make a decision, it will often be uncomfortable when you actively decide, no, you know what? I do want to lose weight. I think I'm going to make a decision to go find a gym. I think I'm going to make a decision to get a personal trainer. I'm going to make a decision to wake up and go exercise for 30 minutes every morning. But when you make those decisions, it is going to cause discomfort because you know I'm going to be hot. It's going to be sweaty. I'm going to have to change my clothes. It's going to take some of my morning. And you know you're going to have to take actions. You're going to have to do things that don't always feel good at the time. If you're going to decide to take on a big project at work, that big thing that you know you've been meaning to fix, then you're going to have to decide to take actions, pull people together, communicate, tell everybody what you're doing and why, and then actually move people forward. If you've been stuck with indecision, then today it's time. Make a decision. Either way, just make a decision that you're going to change or make a decision you're going to stay, and then just stick to that decision for an entire year. This is something I would really like you to consider. Either go apply for a new job or decide you are staying in the job you want, almost as if you just accepted the job you're already in. You've accepted it anew. Today is my first day of my job. Even if it's a job you've been in for 10 years, walk in like it's your first day and just look at it with new eyes. Look at it with what can I do in the next 100 days to make a really big difference, even if you've been there for years. Try that. Accept your job all over again. The job you have, just accept it and decide, yeah, this is so exciting. I'm going to my new old job and I'm going to make a difference. And then go in there and give it the energy that you would give something that was completely fresh and new. Walk into your room, into your closet, open up your closet and decide, yes, I want this shirt. Just like start flipping clothes, flip the hangers one by one. Yes, I love this shirt. I would buy it again. Yes, I love these pants. I would buy them again. Yes, I love these shoes. I would buy them again. Oh, this sweater, I don't even know why I bought it in the first place. I would never buy this again. And throw it out onto your bed and just do that for every single thing. Either decide you are going to keep it or decide you would never buy this in the first place and throw it out. And then just take the pile of clothes on your bed and take them to Goodwill. Just make a decision. You will not regret it. I promise. When you make decisions like this, when you decide you want what you have already, or you decide you're going to change it, it will move you forward. You'll save mental energy. You'll make progress. You'll learn. Decide what you want. Decide you want what you already have, or decide you're going to change it. Do this with your marriage. Walk in and look at your spouse, look at your husband, your wife, your partner, and say to them, I love you. I would marry you again today, and I'm all in. And then go into your relationship starting today as if it were brand new and fresh and that you're going to give it all you have. Try it. See how it changes everything. Do it with your kids. Look at them. I love you. I'm so excited I have you, like you haven't seen them in years. And now they're fresh and new and maybe they've just come into your life. How would you treat that child if now is your first day and this is your brand new son, your brand new daughter? Walk into your house. I love this house. I would buy this house again today. And if you wouldn't, then call a realtor and decide to change. And if perhaps that isn't in the realm of possible for you right now, then look about your house and decide what you would change and then decide to change it. A coat of paint, there's a lot of things you can do for a fairly pretty inexpensive amount, but decide to change it. Don't let your life and the things around you drain your energy anymore. Love what you have, decide you want what you have, or decide to change it. I was trying to think of a story I could tell you today from my life of a time I made a decision. I think, especially where I am now, that if I look back, there was a fork in the road when I was around the age of 28 or 29. And I was an E6 enlisted. I was in the Navy, a first class petty officer, and I was on a path where I most likely would have ended up being a chief petty officer at some point, and I had an opportunity to apply for an officer program. And in the Navy, it's kind of fun when you're enlisted that everybody thinks it's cool to be a chief petty officer, which it is. I was never a chief, but I can imagine that it would be because they have a very strong fraternity, a very strong chief's mess, and they can get a lot of things done, and it's pretty powerful because you've either been a chief or you haven't. And anybody who's been a chief is always a chief, and that's kind of how they look at it. So it's something that's kind of a cool thing to say that you were. And I had a decision to wait to become a chief, which was probably going to take me a little while at the time, or I could start applying for officer programs. There's some obvious pros. If you become an officer, you immediately make a lot more money, but I'm a huge believer that that is not the reason to become an officer. But there is a lot of peer pressure to stay enlisted when you are enlisted, and I understand it because the enlisted people, I often say, I think the Navy could run without officers, but I'm 100% sure it could not run without enlisted people. So the enlisted people are the ones who understand everything. They're the ones who know how to do everything. They're the ones running the engine, fixing the engines, fixing the electronic gear, keeping things running. They keep the entire ship working. And the officers have different roles, but the enlisted people are the people that actually keep everything working. So the Navy absolutely cannot exist without the enlisted force. So there's a lot of peer pressure to stay enlisted. And I remember I was kind of back and forth like, well, I really want to be a chief. And I used to say I was going to be a master chief and that was my goal. But the opportunity came to become an officer and I was having a hard time deciding what I was going to do. Finally, something happened at the command I was at where, in my opinion, at that exact command, there were two chief petty officers who I thought didn't handle a situation well. And there was an officer who I believe never even found out that this thing existed, this problem was occurring. And I didn't think about it at the time, but I realized that officer should have known. And I just thought, if the chief's mess is doing a great job, then there's a lot of things that go right in a command. But if there are any rotten apples in the chief's mess at all, then it takes an officer who loves the chief's mess, but also is willing to say, wait a minute, this is wrong. And it takes an officer who loves the enlisted community in order to be able to recognize that something needs to change. So there was something about that right there. And I could, if I gave you the exact details of the story, I know you would quickly understand what I'm talking about. But I made a hard decision. You know what? I think it's time for me to become an officer. I think it's time. From the moment I very clearly decided I was going to be an officer, about 18 months later, I was an officer. And sometime while I was at my initial school, when I was at OCS, Officer Candidate School, so I hadn't actually even graduated from OCS, I saw the list of people who made chief that year, and it was all the people that were essentially ranked around me. And I thought, oh, if I had just stayed enlisted, I might have just made chief. And so I had a moment of regret. But then I got commissioned, and I do remember always kind of thinking, oh, I could have been a chief. That happened for a while. But then eventually what ended up happening, and I went all in. I went all in on being an officer. With very few exceptions, there's really no going back. Once you're an officer, you're an officer. So I had no decision but to really go all in on that decision. So I went forward, and I didn't make the wrong decision. Every decision is right. If I had stayed enlisted, that would have been the right decision. I would have become a chief. I don't know if I would have become a master chief. Maybe I would have, but that is not the decision I made. So as an officer, I just kept moving forward. I found out what the right path was to succeed as an officer, and I kept moving forward. And now looking back at who I am today and the position I'm in today, I realize that my current career would never have been possible in a million years, probably, or it would have been extremely difficult for the position I'm in now to become a reality if I had stayed enlisted. So the life I'm living is exactly the life I was meant to be living, and it's because I made the decision, I became an officer, and I went 100 miles an hour into the plan to stay an officer and to be an officer and to succeed as an officer. And that led to other successes after I retired from the military, and then I made certain decisions. I made the decision to retire. I think there were some people who thought I made a mistake at that point because I retired as a lieutenant commander, but I did it for family reasons. I was a single mom with my daughter, so I made a decision to retire as a lieutenant commander. And then I still just continued to be who I was, which is always trying to be world class, working my rear end off, and then moving forward, always moving forward toward a goal. And then that's how I got eventually to the career that I'm in right now and the position I'm in right now. And so it doesn't happen without making a clear decision and then without moving toward that decision every single day. And that's how I got here. And I'm sure that you all have had opportunities in your life to make a decision like that one way or the other in various different ways. It could be moving to a new town. It could be choosing to date this person and not that person. It could be choosing really big things like, should I stay at my parents' house or move out? Should I go to this college or that college? Should I join the military or stay in my small town? There's decisions you make all the time that change your life, but none of the decisions are wrong. You just have to decide and then go all in on the decision you've made. So then how do you get out of that confusion? And when you're in that analysis paralysis of trying to decide what is right and what is wrong, how do you actually get out of that overwhelming confusion and actually make the decision that moves you forward? Okay, I'm going to give you 5 ways, and all these are pretty fast. You just have to decide that you're going to do them. So 1 is quit putting yourself last. There's usually things that you know you want to do, things that you want to start. Examples for me would be when I decided to retire. There is absolutely almost nobody who gave me the advice to retire who was currently active duty, and almost all my friends were active duty. I had active duty mentors and everything else. Everybody told me to stay in the Navy, and I was on a progression. I was a due course officer. I was on a path and I was still progressing. So there was no reason for me to retire. but I did the right thing for my daughter. So that was me putting myself first. But I kept working for the Navy because I cared about it so much. So it all ended up working out beautifully. So quit putting yourself last. When you know the things that you want to start, yet you're so busy people pleasing and taking care of others that you don't ever get around to you, then what if you decide to let the other people in your life, like your husband, your kids, your friends, your coworkers, do their fair share of the effort? You don't even have to tell them that this is what you're doing. Just start doing less. Start doing more of what you want to do and less of what you don't want to do. For instance, at work, if you're the one that always plans the happy hour, just don't plan the happy hour. Somebody else probably will. If there's somebody who always brings the birthday cakes, just don't bring the birthday cake. Somebody else probably will. If somebody else always takes the notes at the meeting, but nobody told you to take the notes, you just always do, let somebody else do it sometimes. It's okay. You don't always have to be the one that's doing all of the work. Start asking for more help. If dinner isn't cooked, I'm sure they're going to figure it out. Your husband or your kids might even cook. At work, delegate more. Ask for help more often. When you start putting yourself first more of the time, you're going to free up the time to take care of the things that you care about. You're going to free up the time to work on the things that you think are most important. Okay, number 2, take an action that moves you toward what you want. At least make the decision to take one step forward. Often when you move just a little bit closer, you can see better and then you'll know what to do. The worst thing you can do is absolutely nothing. If you really want something different than what you have now, then take an action in that direction. I always say to people, for one example, if you were like, well, I don't really know what to major in. I don't know if I want to major in socioeconomics or political science, and you start hearing people have those kinds of discussions. Just take a class, go sign up, choose one of the majors, whatever, but take a class. You can always change your major. Don't spend any time not moving toward your goal because you can't make a big decision like that. Just take a class and then ask a bunch of questions and give yourself time to think. Take a class, take another class. Oftentimes, especially at the beginning, the classes you're taking can apply to 50 different majors. So don't stress. Just take a step, decide, do something small. Number 3, take care of yourself. I usually get the most confused and overwhelmed and stressed when I'm not taking care of myself. This usually happens when I'm not sleeping enough, when I'm not eating right, and when I'm not exercising. And the worst part is, the more stressed or overwhelmed I get, the worse I take care of myself. So it's a big circle. The only way to stop it when you start to feel like this is get some sleep, eat the foods that fuel you, hydrate with water and electrolytes. And I just know that when I'm not taking care of myself, I have a harder time thinking and processing, which makes it a lot harder to make a decision. So tell me if you feel the same way. Number 4, I said it already on this episode, but what if every decision you make is right? If that's true, then it's not that big of a deal. It just becomes so much easier to pick a path. Just choose one and go for it. You're either going to take a giant step toward the future you want, or you're going to learn, adjust, and you're going to have another decision that you're already going to make. So no big deal. The most important thing is make the decision and keep moving. And then number 5, ask yourself, what is the worst thing that can possibly happen if you choose B over A? I mean, seriously, if you're having such a hard time making this decision, there must be some goods and bads on both sides. So really, what's the worst possible outcome? If you need to, write out an entire page or 2 in your journal about what could possibly be the worst outcome, and then read it when you're done, and then think to yourself first, how likely is it that that worst thing will actually happen? And even if it's the worst thing, and there's a chance it could happen, I bet it's not the most likely thing. So what's the big deal? And then second, even if the absolute worst thing really did happen, then what would you do to overcome it? Write that down. What if the worst thing happened? What would you do then? And I bet that by the end of all that writing, you're going to realize it's not really that big of a deal and you'll survive. And I've said it in other podcasts, but 99% of the time, the worst thing that's going to happen is only a feeling. You know, like being embarrassed or humiliated, or maybe you're going to feel some amount of shame. That is literally the worst thing that's going to happen most of the time. And all of those are only in your mind. They're all created by you. And if you just let it pass like a wave, it will roll on by and then you can keep moving forward. That's it. Just decide and then move forward. Okay, so the activity for this week, I want you to think of the number 1 goal you're working toward in the next 6 months. There's one decision you need to make right now. What is it? And I want you to commit to make a decision about that today. Maybe your decision is to decide what it is that you want to accomplish in the next 6 months. But if you already know, there's probably something you need to decide to take another step forward. And then also there's one important thing that you could accomplish in the next 1 week toward this goal. Decide what you will work on this week and move toward your goal. This is just one chunk, one portion of the whole effort. This is deciding where you're going to place your energy. If you decide the exact piece of your goal you're going to deliver to yourself this week, you will constrain your focus and it will push you forward. So as I said at the beginning, when you decide ahead of time what you want and you keep your promises to yourself, you will achieve practically everything you set out to achieve. I love the sound of that. Decide what you want, decide that you keep promises to you, and then decide to take the actions to create a career and life you love. You can connect with us on Facebook at Genuine Driven Women, or to learn more about what we offer, check out genuinedrivenwomen.com.